Good afternoon, and welcome to the 2025 Ananda Coomaraswamy Annual Lecture. My name is Laura Weinstein, and I am the Ananda Coomaraswamy Curator of South Asian and Islamic Art. I'm so pleased to welcome you all to this very festive annual event. Today, it's my job to introduce our speaker, the artist Rana Begum. But before I do, I want to say just a few words about this moment at the MFA, because it's a rather special moment for South Asian art here at the museum. There's a lot going on. Last summer, after 6 years of not showing our South Asian painting collection, we once again began to present exhibitions drawn from the collection that change every 6 months, and those are in the gallery right off of the main Huntington Avenue entrance. The current show, if you haven't seen it, explores the theme of winter and spring flowers, combining botanical information with art historical information to show how artists have treated roses, narcissus, and chrysanthemums as biological specimens, as beautiful forms, and as potent symbols. In August, we will again change what's in that space. We'll switch to a new theme, this time focusing on how artists create and manipulate color. In addition to these rotating shows, we, in January of next year, cue Slade, we will be opening the biggest show of South Asian art at the MFA in 20 years. The exhibition features vivid prints of Hindu divinities created when Bengali artists encountered lithographic technology in the 19th century and used it to reinvent popular devotional art. The MFA is one of only 2 museums in the US to collect this type of material that you might call early calendar art. And the exhibition is the first of its kind in the US. With more than 100 objects, the exhibition's highlight is the MFA's collection of 38 early lithographs from 19th century Calcutta, which will show alongside other works from our South Asian collection and select loans, including a digital collaboration with the India-based organization Tasvirgar. So as you can see, that's opening at the end of January. And finally, we have something even bigger on the horizon. We are co-organizing with the Philadelphia Museum of Art the first museum exhibition and scholarly project to examine South Asian weddings as an impetus for the creation of art. Multimedium and multisensory, the exhibition will look at the fantasy and reality of weddings across the subcontinent through several millennia. The show is scheduled to open in 2028. It will be the first time, I believe, that the MFA has ever put a show on South Asia, focusing on South Asia, in our largest temporary exhibition space. I hope, yeah, I'm excited. I hope that all of you who are here today will be active participants in the journey we are undertaking over these next few years. We will create the galleries and we will hang the art, but it is you who will really bring it alive, filling the spaces with voices and energy, ideas, and reactions. This crucial interplay between an artwork and the person who experiences it is something our speaker today takes very seriously. Rana Begum is internationally renowned for her work that spans sculpture, painting, architecture, and plays with light and color, shape and form to create powerful, if subtle, spatial and visual experiences for the viewer. Rana, who is based in London, received her BA at the Chelsea College of Art and Design in 1999 and her MFA in painting at the Slade School of Art in 2002. Over the last 20 years, she has had numerous gallery and museum shows in London and across the UK, as well as in Dubai, Mumbai, Istanbul, Cologne, and elsewhere. Some of these have featured sculptures or prints, while for others, she has created room-sized installations that immerse visitors in waking dreams of color, shadow, and light. Rana is also known for public art commissions, which have been installed in both natural and urban spaces, including in the desert of Coachella Valley, California, in a green space at Rice University's Moody Center for the Arts, on a floating platform on a man-made lagoon in Dubai, high up in the Swiss Alps, and in a busy square at King's Cross in London. In 2019, the MFA commissioned Rana to create a work for the newly installed Arts of Islamic Cultures Gallery. It was her first commission for an American museum. The work was installed last summer, and it has truly transformed the gallery. As I walk through it, as I do many times a day, I'm over and over again drawn to a standstill as I notice the unique, ever-changing light that it projects into the space. Other times I discreetly watch visitors as they bathe in the colorful beams that come through it, point it out to their friends, and try to take selfies in front of it. I'm thrilled that after years in the making and a complex installation, we are able to celebrate its completion with the artist herself. Thank you, Rana, for your partnership, for your beautiful artwork, and for being here today. Now please help me welcome our speaker, Rana Begum.
I'm going to take my glasses off but I'm completely blind, so can't see anyone. Thank you so much for having me here, and I have so much gratitude towards Laura. I mean, so much patience. I mean, artists are quite hard to work with, and Laura has probably had loads of experience. But yeah, I mean, we've had quite a lot of stress and fun and moments of joy and anguish, and, you know, with the commission that I don't know. I mean, it's taken us a very, very long time to get here, and I'm really, really grateful to Laura and also MFA and the team and everyone that's actually has been involved to bring this work alive and present here in this amazing space. So I'm going to start with giving an introduction into my work, a little bit how it all kind of begun for me, and then focusing on public art. And I think that's quite important to kind of see that journey and how the work has kind of come about. So the first slide is actually of my studio in Chelsea. And I'd say this was a time where I was introduced to kind of sculptural aspect of my work, where I really got excited about form, geometry, and how the viewer gets to really activate the work or becomes part of the work. So this was something that just became really fascinating for me. So you can see on this table maquettes, because, you know, I couldn't afford to make huge work. I didn't have the space to make huge work. So I started making maquettes and started playing with form and material. So the focus really, I had to kind of strip back and think about just form, repetition, and how that really still, I mean, I find myself kind of looping back to that phase or to that moment in my work where I want to kind of think about those two things. The next slide, which really looks at a time where I spent a lot of time just looking at colour and how colour works with one another, how it interacts with each other, and how even the tiniest strip of colour would affect the mood or the experience of the work. So this is a piece of work where I'm making with adhesive tapes, actually lithographic tape, and I used to layer and layer the tapes on and get this kind of depth. And in the background you can see that I've expanded that palette with the usage of vinyl, and I used to kind of spend ages cutting these kind of really thin strips. But it became really process heavy, and I realized that it was taking me away from what it was that I wanted to explore and experiment and play with. And this is, I think, after this period was a moment where I felt things really clicked into place, where my initial research on light and form and then colour coming together. So I spent quite a few years just bringing those elements together. And then there was a moment that came, I think I've got 2 children, so I remember after Aisha was born that I think it's quite hard as a female artist and being ambitious and wanting everything, wanting to have kids and wanting to kind of push your work as well and wanting to do larger scale work. And this work that I've got is an installation that I made for Dhaka Art Summer in 2014, and I think it was one of those moments where I just felt like a lot of things coming together. I had a very kind of strict brief, which is that I had to use material locally sourced, and it all had to be pre-planned and it had to be installed, a certain time frame. And I was giving a particular space, so I kind of really responded to, I guess, I'd say to the location, and as well as, and it was the first time going back as an artist, going back to Bangladesh. So I was born in Bangladesh, grew up partly in Bangladesh and partly in the UK. And so going back for me was really significant, being able to kind of show and spend some time there was really important. So this is an installation made up of handmade bamboo baskets. And even though I remember doing a proposal and I remember thinking, I have no idea if this would work. Structurally, I had no kind of support in terms of kind of engineering of this work. So I just remember actually ordering some baskets from eBay, and I had no windows in the studio, so just I had imagined it in my head, and I was thinking, I know it's going to work. I know the light. I feel the light in Bangladesh, and I remember how intense it is. And so it's kind of really responding to some of the memories of growing up as a child in Bangladesh and reading the Quran in the mosque. And so there was a lot of things coming together. I also used to weave baskets with my daddy, and she and I would spend parts of the day kind of weaving. And I remember that being quite a meditative process. So there was a lot of things that I wanted the installation to kind of bring out or speak about. And when I started, when I made the sample in the studio, it didn't quite work. I mean, I had a tiny skylight that would bring the light, but it was like grey. It wasn't sunny, and I thought, no, I'm confident this is going to work. And then came into the space, and we were assembling the baskets together. And as we were putting them together, it started having this kind of properties of like structural kind of properties, which was really fascinating for me. And there are things that I was discovering about the work that I hadn't really thought about initially. Which I then go on to kind of explore in the next installation, which was made in Istanbul, which brought in about the kind of the exterior of the work, and how the light kind of plays with the material and the form, and how it kind of activates the surface. So for me, each work kind of leads to another. It throws up questions that has to get answered by the next. And this has kind of been my process within my studio practice as well. And it's something that I try and kind of hold on to when it comes to work for public spaces. I've also had the opportunity to recreate this installation for a church at Cambridge, Kettle's Yard. And I love these moments where different religion and cultures come together. This church, I remember as a student visiting Kettle's Yard and going into the church and just being really appreciating this kind of meditative quality about the space and calmness, that you were engulfed by this calmness. And I loved the idea that, this installation comes from my experience of reading the Quran in the mosque. And so those two things kind of really had quite an important kind of moment for me with this work. And then this installation obviously led me to think about material and think about structure, think about colour, and how I can create kind of spaces or that people could almost walk through and experience light, colour and form. So when I came back from Bangladesh, I was thinking about materials that would allow me to construct these kind of spaces. And this was a work that I made for my show at Parasol Unit at 2016. And I love how this work comes alive, how as you walk through, colours appear and disappear. And this particular installation, I've had the chance and opportunity to kind of explore and push. And I did a show, I was asked to create a piece of work for a show at Moody, and it was outdoors, and I just absolutely loved the idea that it could really be out in the elements and kind of change and shift. So one of the things that's really important with my work is how it, or how people experience it, or throughout the year, throughout the month, throughout the week, throughout the day. And it's really those kind of subtle changes sometimes that can be really important in terms of how the work can shift or kind of connect to you, or there'll be moments where just the work kind of comes alive. And I think it's really, just having these, this was kind of reconfigured and thought about for this particular site in concrete in Dubai, and just seeing the sunset, and the way the light had an impact on this work throughout the day was incredible. And that's, again, continues to have an impact, and I realize more and more how important it is to really experience the space, to really understand the space, to understand the function of the space, or how people use it, or what it means to people. And not necessarily, in terms of, being, I'm dyslexic, and having that difficulty contextualizing or going down the kind of theoretical route. The visual aspect of my work is really important. So responding to a space, visually is really important. And so the next site is something that I felt really overwhelmed and kind of intimidated by. This was a location where I just thought there is no way I can put anything in there. It was so incredibly beautiful, and just like you just kind of, you don't want to disrupt that kind of view. So I remember this was a work that I actually collaborated with my partner with, who's a structural engineer. And I remember talking to him, and we spent a lot of time kind of chatting about geometry, chatting about architecture, chatting about art, and we draw a lot together as well. And I remember talking to him and said, there's no way, it just doesn't make sense to have art in places like that to disrupt, because it's already so beautiful. And but then the more time I spent there, going on hikes and going for walks and sliding down the mountain in the snow with the kids, it was really, I can start seeing these moments where it just wanting to create moments where it allows you to pause, allows you to kind of breathe in this incredible view. And then you start seeing how colours are popping up and around you. And so this was kind of in response to this, to the landscape and the colours in the landscape. And as you kind of walk around, this form appears and disappears. We had quite a few things to think about. One was obviously the weather, how extreme it can get, from getting really hot to getting incredibly cold and getting covered in snow. But the biggest obstacle was the cows, and how we can avoid it getting completely destroyed by the cows. It's still standing, I'm happy to say. They clearly are happy with it, and it just scratches, I guess, the right parts. So, yeah. This is another series of work where it came up from a body of work where it was accidental. We use a lot of kind of spray cans in the studio. And when you're using this kind of material, you have to kind of test for color, consistency, and flow. And we always have a piece of paper up in the spray booth, and each time we check, we're kind of spray the paper with the cans, and they're usually like a build-up of this. And it tells a kind of a narrative of what's going on in the studio that I love. And I remember kind of suddenly kind of looking at these papers and thinking, actually, there's something going on here. And so we started collecting these pieces of paper, which has become a body of work. But the more I looked at these kind of paintings on paper, the more I felt that these works were kind of coming alive and actually sculptural, and they needed to come out into the physical space. So I spent a bit of time exploring with material, and so this is made up of wire mesh that's powder coated. And there's a form within a form that kind of is suspended in space. So this body of work came out of COVID, where it was a moment where I guess we all needed some form of, kind of uplifting and positive I've lost the words now, but I remember just needing to connect, needing to kind of find a way to find something that was joyous, something that was kind of uplifting and positive. And so my first show was actually with Kate McGarry, was of this particular series of work. It's a work that I feel requires people to spend time and walk around and really be immersed in this kind of almost this painting that's kind of comes alive, not for Instagram, which became crazy for kind of social media. And then this series of work I've pushed and developed for a few years now, and it's still and currently it's on show at Pallant House in Chichester in the UK, and it's kind of connecting two levels of space, and with this beautiful window. I love responding to architecture. I love responding to light in the space. I love responding to the way that people kind of use the space. And with this particular series of work, it really needs to be accessible and needs to be at a height where people really feel the kind of the physicality of the material. I also collaborate a lot. I think we live at an age where we're at a time, I feel, where we're incredibly fortunate to be able to connect and have dialogues and have conversations. And I think it's so enriching to be able to do that. This is one of my favorite architects, Marina Tabassum, and she and I were invited to work together to come up with a space that responded to This Is Tomorrow. And so this is an installation where we made this space where people could come together and really experience life, but also it to be kind of about meditation, about more about kind of connecting with each other. So this is a kind of a surface that shows the texture, the image. And this show then toured to Dubai at Concrete as well. This is another a body of work that I'm exploring a lot at the moment. So it always series kind of take time, and there are moments where I find that I need to pause. I need to kind of take a breather or take a distance from it, and then there are moments where I am really kind of just continue and can continue because it's just, there's a flow and there's a rhythm that's happening. So this was, I was asked to design some curtains for a music hall, which I then was like, I wanted to kind of respond. When I visited the site, the scale of the windows felt like that they could actually become, tapestries rather than just functional, material. And so they've now have become these kind of pieces where quite kind of monolithic kind of drapes that are hanging in the space. There's 11 of these. And again, responding to what happens in the space, responding to kind of the rhythm and the music, and the way the space gets used as well. I was also asked to design the seats there's two music hall in Bristol Beacon, and I was asked to design the seats, which, again, I really wanted to respond. The architect had used wood in most of the kind of the spaces, so it felt really honeycomb, kind of warm, and I wanted to kind of build on that warmth, but really break that geometry up and create these kind of pixel of explosion of colour. And the reason then it goes on to actually the window here, which I'm hoping that everyone has seen and experienced in various time in the day. I've just seen it for the first time today, and I'm so pleased. I'm really, really pleased how it's installed. I'm really pleased in the location and the size. When you're working on a commission like this and from so far away, so many things can go wrong, and you have no idea how it's going to be handled. But Laura, you've been just amazing in getting this through and up. And I love this time lapse, and I think it says it all in terms of how a work should really, public art should really have the reach beyond its perimeter, and how it should really draw people in, how it should really allow people to kind of engage. And for me, it just it was just magical watching this video, and I couldn't wait to see it. And it's just been great to be here. And it made me kind of think about actually how this conversation started. I remember Laura sending me an email asking if I was interested, and I just love the fact that, you know, I was finally able to have work in the Islamic art section of a museum where I was responding to something that I've always been inspired by. And so I remember going through some of the works in the archive and in the collection, and just being reminded of what it was that actually drew me to art, and what it was that I loved. You know, I remember as a child reading the Quran 5 days a week, and just being mesmerized by the pattern and the geometry and the colors of the Quran. And so seeing these, it kind of really brought back a lot of memories, and why I'm kind of really fascinated and interested in bold, vibrant colors. This is another piece where you can see, which is unusual actually, is the pink, which I really wanted to kind of pick up on as well. So some of these colors that you see are kind of really inspired. And I remember having seen it, then going back and, you know, making a model. I find it really difficult to articulate what it is that I want to say, or what I want the proposal to do. And so models are an incredible tool to be able to explain without having to use many words. So I remember bringing and setting up the models at the window, and I was just like, okay, this is what I imagined, this is what. And actually, you know, Laura and I didn't need to say much, and it's like, it makes sense. That's how we were. Yeah. So this is an image which shows the 3 different kind of color schemes that I was thinking about, and the proposal and the geometry. This is a video that shows how much the exterior and the interior kind of is connected. And I really wanted to kind of bring that up. And I didn't want it to be about blocking the view. I still want to maintain that view out the window. So for me, it was really important to kind of spend a bit of time and think about the colors, think about the geometry, think about the way the work responded to the collection, but also the space, the location, and the arch as well, and how that kind of frames the work as well. I thought I'd speak a bit more about the other series of work. This is a series of work where it started off actually where I was in Bangladesh. When my father passed away, he left some land that he donated, and in order for him to donate, my siblings and I had to go to Bangladesh and sign all the paperwork, but we also had to go to the registry office, and this registry office was covered entirely of fingerprints. And it was already quite an emotional trip, because, you know, of my father having passed away. But when I walked into this registry office, I felt goosebumps. I felt this moment where like art and architecture and land kind of connected. You know, we have this kind of connection of you know, with land and our body that we sometimes forget, you know. And so this series of work has a lot of meaning for me. You know, it started off as something that was quite personal, then became something that was much more open, you know. So I made this installation on for Dhaka Art Summer, and it's on kind of 5 different kind of levels and all the way up the stairwell. And so I had a lot of students helping me. And as you can imagine, you know, there's a lot going on politically in Bangladesh, and, you know, hearing what it means brought a lot of things into the work for me that I hadn't really thought about. You know, migration. You know, there are a lot of things that the students were, you know, kind of talking about that I felt had a lot of significance in the things that we are going through. You know, again, during COVID, you know, for me, it felt like, you know, especially when we couldn't hold or touch our, you know, people that were closest to us. And so it's just threw up a lot of things for me that I feel kind of, very, very strongly about. The next series of work is using a material that I think everyone would also recognize, chain link fences. This is a material that I've been interested in and fascinated by, and kind of always struggled to understand why people, you know, put up fences. But this was kind of, I think, the first kind of Trump era, and I just really, I remember visiting LA and, you know, flying into LA and then driving from LA to Palm Springs and just seeing the vast kind of space. And there would be moments where these kind of heavy fencing borders, and I just couldn't understand. I couldn't understand how we could be at a time, you know, where it feels so open. It feels we are so connected. It feels so easy to reach each other, but yet we have these borders, we have these fences up. We feel like we have to kind of, I don't know, divide. And so for me, it really, I felt like I needed to kind of respond to that. And so this is an installation that kind of responds to the landscape, so it's almost quite mountain-like kind of form that you can actually walk into. But as you first enter the work, it's really quite claustrophobic and quite intense. But as you keep walking through and into the center of the work, this experience changes. It becomes, the space kind of opens up and becomes quite kind of ephemeral and quite calm and quite, it's like the complete opposite experience that you get. And it was really actually touching, you know, when I was there, to see how emotional people got, and how much they felt connected to the work and what it meant as well. Sorry, it's stuck. So this material still kind of, for me, it's something that I still kind of, my work, I wouldn't say is political, but there are moments in the work that really reflects on the time that we're in. This is another body of work that, I've forgotten the title now, actually, of the show. It was at Whitechapel Gallery. And it was actually a title that made me really think about this kind of somber moment politically that we were facing, and in regards to the environment. And immediately, I think Rothko popped into my head, and I was kind of imagining these kind of colors of the red and the dark blue kind of coming together, and people being able to walk around this work and through this work. and this installation kind of, yeah. And then I'm kind of coming, I know I don't have much more time. This is, I thought I'd put this in because this is a more recent body of work that I'm looking at, and this is the show that I had at Cape Magary last year, and looking at color, light, and material in a way that that I think is, I would say, that's kind of reflective, meditative, that creates moments of kind of contemplation. And I think we really need this in the current time. I feel like we really need to be able to kind of connect with each other. And so this body of work really, I feel, helps me to kind of look at, I guess, I don't know, I feel quite emotional. I think for me, I feel like we need to kind of really take a moment and reflect and think about how we inhabit space and how we connect with each other. And so these kind of moments where I'm looking at different materials, stone, metal, glass, and that I think creates or makes us more kind of sensitive to our surrounding, and the way we look at spaces. These are some of the kind of the drawings I do while I'm traveling. I always take kind of watercolors with me, and you know, I know there are moments where I really struggle, and I need to find a way to kind of calm myself down, and so these kind of watercolors really help. And I thought I would also show you and give you a context in terms of where I live and work. I've been very fortunate to be able to work or create this space and work in this space with my team. And so my studio is on the ground floor and I live upstairs. So this has been designed by Peter Cully, Spatial Affairs. And he was really, I feel, kind of sensitive or is aware of how I need light to really work. And yeah, he's created this beautiful space where my team and I are able to work and create. And then the next show that's coming up is in Savannah. So hopefully if you are around, you would come and visit and see the show. I don't know if I've gone over my time, sorry. Thank you. So if you have questions, happy to take questions.
If anyone has a question, just please raise your hand if you're able, and we'll come over to you with a microphone.
If I put everyone to sleep. Yes.
Coming down with the microphone.
Hello.
Thank you for waiting.
Thank you so much. This is just phenomenal. I'm just curious that since you moved from Bangladesh to UK at age 8 or something like that, at what stage that you got excited about it?
So I didn't know I could actually draw. I didn't know anything about art. So when I first went to school, I spent the first day asleep, because I just was so bored and I couldn't understand a single word. And I remember not knowing what to do. And then the second day, I remember the teacher being quite strict, and it's like, no sleeping, and using kind of sign, no, and giving me just loads of paper and pencils and pens. And that's when I started drawing, and I remember I couldn't stop. I just drew and drew, and everything I drew went up on the wall. And this was, I was drawing basically, it was figurative. I was drawing my family, I was drawing the landscape from Bangladesh, the rice fields, the rivers, the trees, the houses, the mud, the straw houses. So, I was drawing all of that. And that's, I didn't know then, but when I look back and through a lot of therapy, now finding out all of those connections, what it meant. I remember actually through therapy, I remember spending a lot of time sitting and staring into space. And when I look back, and I remember my therapist going, "What is it that you were staring at?" And I was like, I was staring at actually, we had bathing pools, one was for men, one was for women. But I used to spend a lot of time in the men's one. And the reason for it was that, and my mum used to just shout at me all the time, to leave. She was like, "No, you can't be there." But I just used to love staring at the water and the light. And so the men's one was it was much more open, and the light used to kind of flood in. And I used to get bitten by mosquitoes, and I spent a lot of time getting told off, and just finding that connection was really wonderful. Thank you for that question.
I have a question about the construction of all the baskets.
Yeah.
Did they support themselves, or did you? That's what it looked like. You didn't have to build anything to hold them up.
It was actually really incredible how. So I think my partner says underneath it, I'm an engineer. I'd love to say that. I think I'd love it if I was an engineer, because I think there'd be so many things would be possible. But I just started, when I started putting 5 of them together, you could see how much support it was kind of providing. And it felt unnecessary, even though, I had to kind of pre-plan. Sorry, I was trying to go back to it. And it was just incredible. I've put a lot of images in, sorry. Almost there. It was really exciting moment when I started assembling them together, and I realized that actually I could remove more and more of the wires that was holding the installation up. But the other part that was really exciting was the exterior of it as well. And sorry, it's too many. Anyway. Is there any more questions? Yeah.
I have a question about the installation in Palm Springs. It's a stunning piece, but even more stunning was the overview view from above.
Yeah.
And obviously you don't get. So
no.
yeah, I'm just curious whether you've thought
that was
about.
Actually really interesting when I saw the videos, when someone had done the videos to see. Because actually, we made a model of it as well, and so we knew the geometry, and the geometry really comes from the landscape. Really wanted, again, I didn't want to make something that really blocked this kind of view of this incredible landscape. It's so beautiful, and the sunsets that you get is also, and the sunrises, they're amazing. And I thought, I want to make something that kind of really responds and really appears and disappears, so this material really helps do that. But yeah, I think when you walk in, you really feel that geometry. Even though you don't see it, you get a sense of that geometry. You get a sense of the material kind of layering and what happens, and how that kind of obscures or creates views of your surrounding. So yeah, it's really interesting how that works. But I was hoping also that I'd also have a location where you'd be able to climb up those kind of mountains and have a view down as well. Yeah.
Here, I have a question. This may be a dumb question, but why the window? Why that particular spot? And how did you settle on the colors?
Thank you for that question. I got really excited when Laura asked if I would like to do a commission and respond to this location. Windows, I feel, I love architecture. I always look at architecture. I remember actually as a student going into the Abbey in St. Albans and remembering I was drawing the space and it was light coming in through the window. And I remember how much I just wanted to kind of capture that change. And so being asked to do a commission for a window, I just loved it. I loved the idea that I can create something where, for the first time, where you really connect the outside and the interior space. I think, architects have an amazing job in the way that they can create these kind of incredible spaces and really manipulate. I don't like the word manipulate, but use light as almost as a material. And actually, Marina Tabassim, who I collaborate and is a close friend and really have a lot of conversations with, and she's, I would say, is an architect that's very successful in the way that she uses light as a material. So I found that, I thought that was a really exciting challenge to work with, and I love challenges. I love having moments in my work where it really pushes what I do. And the colors, again, it's really difficult, because you want to, at the same time, respond to a site, respond to a brief. And Laura kept the brief quite simple for me, which I really appreciated because it gave me a lot of freedom. But also, she gave me an insight into the collection and the artists, whether it's contemporary or, the 16th century kind of works on paper, that I just really wanted to kind of respond. So the colours felt like it needed to kind of come from that, but also luckily connects to colours that I use in the studio. So I guess it's really thanks to kind of Laura being able to see that kind of connection with my own practice in the studio. Yeah.
Okay, we have one last question here.
So at the very end, you talked about you and your team, who you hadn't mentioned up to that point. So I'm wondering, who is this team, and is it a set group of people, or does it change from project to project? And I wondered if you would talk a little bit of the process from going to making your own work in the studio to managing group projects and managing a team.
So the team, there's lots of different teams. I have a small team in the studio. We are a group of 8. And that's a mixture of artists, designers. Actually, we have lots of, Anna, who's actually did an English degree and then went into sets design. So I've been incredibly, incredibly fortunate to be able to work with a team that brings so much to the studio. And also working with the team here. It's been absolutely incredible. I can't believe what we've achieved, and it wouldn't have been possible without everyone's support. The process in terms of a commission like this usually comes, when you're fortunate enough to get invited and asked to do a proposal. I'm in a position where I feel very lucky, where I don't necessarily have to go through a shortlist, and I've been asked to do a proposal, and I usually spend a little bit of time doing site visit, looking through if there's a particular thing that I should be really responding to, or the space will inhabit. So there are things that becomes part of the brief, even though it's not in the brief, and that's really fascinating, to be able to look at the aspects of a space. So I then kind of spent a little bit of time with Laura going through the archive and the collection, and then going back home, back to the studio, and thinking it through and what I want to use. So it feels like a stained glass window, but not quite that. It's kind of, I guess I'd say, more contemporary, modern version of stained glass window. And I really wanted to kind of think about that kind of layering that happens within my work. Think about how when you layer, that you get this kind of third layer of geometry and color that kind of occurs, and what happens as the viewer moves around. So all of the aspects, I then kind of go through. I draw, but not that much. I really like to kind of physically work with material. And as I was saying before, it's really difficult for me to articulate what it is that I want the work to do. And so it's much better when I physically have something to show and can say, this is exactly what will happen. I remember actually working on a project I think we talked about earlier, Abraj, and I won this project, and they came to the studio and they were like, okay, so, we have a really important things to discuss, which is that the work can't go outside. And I was like, hang on a sec. I responded to the light in Dubai. It has to go outside. There's no option. They were like, no, we usually have the show and the work inside. And I can be assertive, and I thought, well, I can't be the usual diva self, so what do I do? And it was during October, winter time. Anyway, someone opened, in my old studio, I didn't really have any windows, so someone opened the door and left it open, and at that moment, this flooded with sunlight, the winter sun, and hit the model. And I was like, brilliant, and I just sat there in silence, and they all looked at me and they were like, okay, so yes, this has to go outside. And basically the model just showed when the sun hit the work, the colors just stretched across the table. And at that moment, I didn't have to do any work. I didn't have to say anything. It was the team then figuring out how they were going to make sure to have this work outdoors no matter what. It ended up being in the water because there was there was just so many complex kind of issues. But the process is kind of, it really varies from project to project, and it can be challenging. It can be, I remember, even with this being kind of in tears, going, no. So there's a lot of kind of time and effort goes in, and it's not just in the studio, it's people that you don't see or hear the names of, and I'm really, really grateful for everyone that's really helped put this together. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rana. Thank you for everyone who came today. I appreciate it so much. Wonderful.